We are approaching the 6th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and let's bring in humorist, author, and actor and filmmaker Harry Shearer. Harry's film, The Big Uneasy, about the New Orleans disaster of 2005, is available nationwide on video on demand, on cable, on the web, and also on iTunes. And the DVD is also available on Amazon.com. Harry's also touring with the film. Harry, thanks so much for coming tonight.
My
appreciate
pleasure,
it.
David. Thank you.
When the New Orleans documentary premiered last year, you said you were trying to change people's perceptions. Tell us a little more about that, and do you think the film was successful in that regard?
Well, you know, I start from this. I was told by an anchor for one of the major network news broadcasts when I asked why viewers of that broadcast didn't know why New Orleans flooded. This was the answer I got. Quote, "We just think that the emotional stories are more compelling for our audience," unquote. So my job, as you know, walking in from the comedy world, but somebody had to do it, was to actually collect the actual information, interview the people who really knew what the hell they were talking about, put them on camera, have them telling their story to the audience, and leave it to the audience to figure out, okay, now I know why.
It is a devastating portrayal of a lot of folks. How has the Army Corps of Engineers reacted to this?
The Army Corps of Engineers tried very hard not to be involved in the film. I got two of their people to be interviewed, and then I spent 2.5 months getting the civilian head of so-called Task Force Hope down there, and eventually found a friend of hers who would intercede on my behalf, because I thought it was important for them to be on camera telling their story. Their story is basically, we don't talk about the past, we talk about the future. There was one moment in time when the engineer-in-chief, Lieutenant General Strock, we have him on film in the movie, took responsibility on behalf of the Corps for the disaster, and within 2 months he had retired or was retired. We don't know really the answer to that question. And since then they have just said, look what we're building, look at the big stuff we're building, and try to ignore the fact that a whistleblower in the film has said that at the heart of that big new system that taxpayers have now spent more than $8 billion on, with more to come, there are pumps that are defective by design and will not work in a storm surge situation.
I was in Biloxi when the storm hit, and I was struck and just moved, and things I'll never forget, by sort of the institutional roadblocks that caused a lot of people to lose their life. And I suppose it's the same sort of main theme with New Orleans, that they thought that this would protect the city.
Well, they were told to protect the city. The Corps of Engineers was told by Congress in 1967, after Hurricane Betsy, build something that will protect New Orleans from the maximum possible hurricane. As we document in the film, first thing they did was redefine the maximum probable hurricane as the standard project hurricane. And in that model, they threw out all of the most severe recent hurricanes as improbable outliers. So they had dumbed down the job from the very beginning, and then they made it worse from there.
I've got to ask you, since you just came back from London, England, what's it been like over there with the riots on the streets and the sort of
I got me a flat screen plasma. I don't know about anybody else, but I got me a new TV. No, it's been interesting. You know, I think that the British have been talking in great depth about the role of policing and what the police do. And you know, the police were criticized for overreactions in a couple of riots or demonstration situations. And the flashpoint for this very event was them killing somebody who they had originally said shot at them, and it turns out did not. So now the defense of the police is, well, now they take this softly approach. But to me, having been around LA in '93 for that uprising or riot, and New Orleans in the aftermath of the flooding, the crucial question that the police have to answer is the public being assured that they are safe, that they feel protected? And when the British police, when the London police pulled back the first 2 nights of the riot, what was projected on television was this feeling that you are not safe. And then you had all these vigilante groups showing up and saying, well, we'll protect our neighborhood. Now, vigilante is a loaded word, but they were basically self-protection organizations that sprang up spontaneously because people didn't feel safe. The job, and the police, I'll tell you one thing, David, I really feel this has proven. The British are the world leaders in surveillance cameras. There is no square foot of London specifically that is not covered by a surveillance camera. I think this has made the police passive. They can go back to their offices and watch tape all night and make arrests and think they're doing the job. And the job, you know, then involves running people through these all-night court sessions. But that doesn't make the population feel safe. What makes the population feel safe is the police on the streets at the moment of the event saying, and that's where they failed.
I got to ask you also about Rupert Murdoch and what's going on. And one of my producers actually wrote the most brilliant question, so I'm going to read it straight from here so I get it right. You play the voice of Mr. Burns on The Simpsons.
Says who?
And Mr. Burns looks so much like Mr. Murdoch. Is there a spiritual connection between these two captains of industry, or at least a similar business ethos?
Well, the main difference between me and Mr. Murdoch, you see, is I played it a little more cagily. I didn't groom my children to replace me. I ate them. Job well done, I'd say.
Is James Murdoch going to get eaten?
I think he's in the process of being very slowly consumed right now. He's just in the appetizer course of himself, but I think he will be the entree before long.
While you were abroad, some big news here in terms of our presidential candidates. The Republican field
When you say I was abroad, I was across the Atlantic.
Okay.
Just to be specific.
Across the Atlantic.
Less people read something into that.
So the field is narrowed. Tim Pawlenty's out. Mitt Romney didn't participate in Iowa. Michelle Bachmann did. She
Rick
won the
Perry is in.
Rick Perry is in.
So it's not narrowed. It's just it's
getting
stabilized and it's widened and narrowed at the same
All right,
time.
so who's the worst in this?
Who's the worst? I think the worst is the political reporters who spend half their time talking about the Iowa straw poll and the other half of their time saying how this doesn't mean anything. But we're supposed to care about it. But it doesn't mean anything, but we're supposed to care about it, but it doesn't mean anything. It has no predictive value at all. It's just, it serves the same function as the political conventions do now, an opportunity for all the political reporters to assemble en masse and act like the herd that they really are. I think, you know, if I'm Barack Obama, I'm praying that Michelle Bachmann gets more TV time every day because she says something about some celebrity that's wrong every day, and that's only good for whipping up the fear of the other. But, you know, I'm still an old-fashioned betting man. The Republicans nominate the next guy in line. It's Mitt Romney. And I do believe this. The nomination of Mitt Romney historically will owe a lot to Glenn Beck, because Glenn Beck was the person who will have made it safe for evangelical Christians to vote for a Mormon.
That's a great take. And I got to ask you before we let you go, President Obama. He's under some criticism for the left for not being strong enough. He's always under criticism for the right for being socialist, Marxist, whatever they want to come up with. If he called you on your cell phone and asked you for some advice, what would you tell him?
I'd tell him, stop calling this number. No, I'd say, you know, there's a letter on your desk that's been there since June of 2009 from the whistleblower inside the Corps of Engineers saying that the pumps at the heart of the new system that are supposed to be protecting New Orleans are defective. Would you please read that letter and pay attention before the next flood in New Orleans has your name on it?
Harry Shearer, always a pleasure
Thanks,
talking with you, and big fan of your work, and love the film, The Big Uneasy. If you haven't seen it, folks, you should absolutely get it, because it has an impact. And thanks so much for coming here on Countdown and sticking around for the Countdown Current Extra, or whatever we call this.
The Web Extra.
The Web Extra. Thanks, Harry.
David.
Good to see you.
My pleasure.